Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you'd like to support the podcast, if you'd like to support me, please head over to the louperez.locals.com and join the Lou Perez community. If you hear some music, my son is composing right now. A few weeks back, my wife and I had the pleasure of watching a documentary called Red Dog. It was one of the best documentaries I'd seen definitely in a while. We thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was like, hey, why don't I look up the guy who made it? And that guy is Luke Dick. He's a songwriter, a musician, storyteller. He made this fantastic documentary about the strip club where his mother and her friends used to work in the 70s. We had a really great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And please check out the documentary Red Dog and buy the soundtrack that should be available now. I'm very happy to be joined by Luke Dick. He's a musician, songwriter, singer, and also he has this amazing documentary called Red Dog that is available now. I got to watch it on Amazon, and I absolutely loved it. And one of the things that I've been noticing, Luke, is so much of my time is spent on negativity and bullshit online and all that, that I really love the opportunities to talk about stuff that I love and stuff that I thought was great and entertaining. And your documentary is certainly up there. So thank you for making it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be a part of some joy. For anyone, really. I don't know if it's an aesthetic, but I know when we set out to make the movie that the movie, since it's about strippers in the 70s who are now 60, 70 years old, it could have easily been a dark film and heavy. But honestly, the stories in it were, a lot of them were wrought with joy, and then some of them were wrought with pain as well. So I feel like the work to make it joyful was fairly easy because my mother's generally a joyful person.
Yeah, and maybe we could talk about that because your mother is one of the stars of the film. And how did for one, how did it come about? Maybe we could talk about just what the Red Dog was, if you can explain that, and then just
Red Dog is a topless bar in Oklahoma City that started as a go-go dancing place in the mid '60s, and it's still open today. So it's somewhat of a rite of passage. It's notorious in Oklahoma City. Everybody knows what it is if they're from Oklahoma City. And so there is some historical aspect to the film, cultural history. I was actually a history major, and I invited my favorite history professor to an early screening of it. And he's like this 80-year-old sort of Tom Landry-esque, very more like Jimmy Stewart or something, and inviting Jimmy Stewart to a movie about a topless joint and telling them that it's my contribution to history. But it is social history in a way. But my mother, I knew that she worked there even as a young kid, but it wasn't until I was 11 that I figured out that she wasn't just a bartender at this place. And she had, about 5 or 6 had stopped working there. And so 11 or 12, I figure out that she was a dancer. And I just kind of stuck that information in my head. It wasn't that significant to me really by then, because we had a pretty normal lifestyle in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. And then I became interested in stories more as I got older, 18, 19, 20, enjoyed conversations with people. And then, I don't know, they're not called podcasts then. Things like NPR stories like This American Life, I found really compelling. And liked that medium, and I was a musician and a songwriter already. And I thought this would be interesting to just get my mom, record some stories and see how it works. And so that was the beginning of it, was me recording stories from her and then cutting them into 2 or 3 minute pieces and scoring them. And then when I was living in New York, I got a camera and started really falling in love with cinema. And I turned it into a documentary not long after that. I said that I had interest from This American Life. They were in the middle of producing a story. And then I sort of bailed on all that because I wanted to make a film about it and then come back to any sort of story about it that was strictly audio.
Yeah. Was it tough to get your mother to open up at the start of it, or was it something you had to coax her to do?
No. She's such an open book as a person, and it really comes through in the film. And most of the women on the film were easy to talk to in terms of just asking them about their life. And they all seemed to find a catharsis in talking about their youth, because it was such a culture that they identified with in a way. And so I just treated it as anybody else with, I don't know, anybody else. That's not a good way to put it. Treated it as somebody who's genuinely interested in their story, and just asked the next question of whatever curiosity came out of their story, and it led to the next thing. So my mom was not at all trepidatious about going on film, except that she, as in retrospect, said, I thought it was something that you would do for a hot minute and then drop it. And it really didn't.
Is that part of your character? Like, kind of, is that the kind of person you are?
No, I'm not at all. I mean, I've made no money as a musician and songwriter for 15 years and just kept at it until I found success, and it's like, what part of me doing me ever led you to believe that if I was flying out, because by then I wasn't living in Oklahoma anymore, and if I'm flying out and filming this stuff, it's eventually going to happen. I care enough about it. And so the real turning point there was, she was a nutritionist at a nursing home. And the free press rag in Oklahoma City is called the Gazette. And I ran a Kickstarter page. We were right at the end of filming, maybe, or getting close to being done filming, we thought. And then I met this guy from Kickstarter, and he's like, I love this project. Why don't you run a Kickstarter? I'm like, I really don't need money for it, honestly. I could just keep doing it out of my pocket on the side or whatever. And he's like, just trust me, just do this. It's going to develop such a fan base for the project. And so we did it. And then all these new characters came out of the woodworks that were seminal to the film. And then also it was the campaign itself was somewhat of a regional viral sensation in Oklahoma, because people got excited and intrigued by the idea of somebody doing a film about such a notorious part of Oklahoma culture. And it was on the cover of the Gazette, which is distributed everywhere in Oklahoma City. And so my mom had to go talk to her boss, and she was all scared and crying and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, and then kind of guilt set in, like, what am I doing?
This expose on my mother.
Yeah. And it really wasn't ever meant as an expose. It's right. Just that my mother, then she was mid 50s, pushing 60. She's not going around putting that on her fucking resume, right. To get a job as a nutritionist. So that was a little sticky. But then she was like, I told you that I would do it, and I made a promise, and I want to do it. And so then we did it, and she's become somewhat of a sensation in Nashville. She goes to like industry events. When I get a number one or something like that, she'll go, and everybody's obsessed with her because she's so affable and charismatic and magnetic as a person, and it comes through on the film. And so I would like to think, maybe this is just me saying this to assuage my own guilt, any guilt that I have, I would like to think that it was validating in some way, you know, to have a retrospective on somebody's life like that. And also people really do genuinely love her. Are my agent for the film. We debuted at South by Southwest, and he's just this quiet guy, you know, and it was all business all the time with him. You know, every meeting was 15 minutes, just the facts, get the fuck out kind of a thing. And then after the film, it was a packed house. Everybody was loving it. And he came up to my mom. He's just like, I just want to say I love you so much. And I was just like, this guy, you know, who I didn't get an iota of emotion out of the entire time I deal with him. He's like adopting my mother in a way, you know, and he kissed her on the cheek. And I was just like, whoa, you know, I did not see that coming. My stoic agent.
Yeah.
Just kissing my mother on the cheek.
You know, I wonder when your mother, you know, said, "Oh, I thought, you know, you'd be, you know, putting this off to the side or something like that." I wonder if it's almost her way of saying like, maybe my story isn't that interesting or something like that. Because I find a lot of people like you need to tell them, they need someone to say, no, your story's amazing and we need to tell your story. And it's sort of like, I'm just thinking like, if it wasn't for you, I'm like, where does this story go? Like, is this just kind of lost to history? Is it something that, you know, when your mom and her friends get together, you know, they reminisce a little bit, but then it's gone. It's out there.
I think that's it. But they also would reach out to each other. A lot of my mother's lifetime friends were people that she met in that era of her life. And so there was a definite bond that happened from working in that industry. And, but I can't imagine, I don't know. I mean, I guess somebody technically could have done a film that's similar to that. But I would also like to think that me and my co-creator have a style about it in terms of dealing with humans on a human level in a film that you wouldn't think is going to actually be about human relationships and dysfunction, but then also hopefulness and triumph, all from, you know, people who were strippers 40, 50 years ago or whatever. So I feel like that's a unique twist, a retrospective this far.
When you and your partner were putting it together, were there any moments when you're like, I'm a little too close to this to be able to weigh in on, say, like a cut or something like that?
I don't generally like listening back to interviews that I do. I don't think maybe I tried to listen to an interview one time and I can't listen back. And so I definitely had to lay off editing when it came to, I'm in the film. And so I'm sort of almost a third person narrator in the film. And it's sort of the rug that ties the room together, so to speak. And I just trusted him to cull it in a way that allowed me to maintain objectivity about myself. And I was happy with what he did. But there's a story. I guess this is a spoiler alert.
Well, can I do the first spoiler? I just want to do the first. From your mother's own testimony, she was probably the first woman to bejazzle her vagina. Bejazzling or something. Yeah. I forget what it is technically.
Yeah, that was the one anecdote where I was like, this is so immodest. That's putting it lightly. Such a euphemism. Such a personal story that's both embarrassing and funny at the same time, where she ends up putting these sequins all around her groin area. And it was every time in the film, I was like feeling the tension in the room, because it's so in there. And because it's almost strangely, the film is wholesome, but I mean, definitely a rated R wholesome. And I was like, God, please just everybody hang on, because this story has a reason, the story has a reason of being there. And then there is a payoff, and I just didn't want to also to be, and these anecdotes are animated too. And
Right.
the animation is funny and
fantastic. The animation is so well done, man. Really great.
This painting behind me that you can see, it's by the same guy who animated the film. And when I moved to Nashville, he was my next door neighbor, and he was always on his front porch painting out there. And I saw this painting, I loved it, and he was just getting into video, and he's just such an awesome cobbler and multimedia guy. And I'm like, you really need to be a part of the film. And we've since made a lot of like videos and worked extensively together.
And his name, if you want
to. Casey Pierce. He's on Instagram as Plastic Diamonds. Anyway, he did such an awesome job, and there's such a real comic levity to the animations in it, and they're crude, or they're animated crudely. It's like obviously not the hi-fi Pixar kind of stuff, but it does the trick in such a stylistic way. But that story comes about as one of the anecdotes, but it's before the twist of the film being a serious film. And I'm just like, God, I hope people don't walk out, because I don't want my mother's life to be some kind of stupid fart joke or something like
a cartoon.
That, yeah. Right. Yeah. But my favorite part is that story is so inside and blue, but then there's a twist right after that about self-worth and validation and all of this, which I'm just like, that is such a payoff to me, to have that story back to back with this monologue about how she felt as a dancer and how she felt in relationship to herself. So I still stand by it, I guess, from a directorial perspective.
Oh yeah, 100%. And before I gave my spoiler, you said you were gonna give a spoiler of your own.
Spoiler, actually.
Oh, it was. I beat you.
Yeah, that was. We were on the same page, and it's just an anecdote, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but it gives you a little inside peek at some of the behind the scenes dilemmas of stripper life.
I'm wondering. So just to talk a little bit about myself and my own story. My dad is from Argentina originally, immigrant Argentina, and he tells me stories about his life and the stuff that he went through. His dad died when he was 8, so he was basically working since he was like 6 or 7 years old. He got kicked out of high school when he was 16. He was banging women who were like, in their late 20s, maybe, early 30s. He's been shot at. He used to carry a revolver around with him. He used to have fist fights all the time. And his is a story where I think very much like your mother's, where I'm like, fuck, I've lived a boring life. Totally. Holy shit. Like I'm the kid, I'm the son who became an English major, and I write and I do comedy as well. But like, I could tell that story, if you give me the story, I can clean it up for you, but I can't live that story. And it was like, wow.
That's kind of the American dream aspect of the film, really, is that, my life compared to my kids' life has been, a little more rough and tumble or considerably more rough and tumble than theirs. And that's all. I feel like that's maybe the goal, or the unstated goal maybe, is trying to create a life for your kids that was better than the ones that the one better than the life that you had, because no parent is going to say, gosh, I would love for my kid to rack up some experience getting shot at,
Right.
or trying random drugs in a club, that kind of thing. You know, I read the Irving Berlin biography, and one of the things that struck me was he moved out of his house. One of the things he liked to do for fun was swim across the East River and back as an 8-year-old or something like that in the mornings. And then he got to be 10 and didn't feel like he was a good enough earner for his household. And so he moved out. It's too much. He was just too much of a burden for himself. And then he went down and started busking in Lower East Side to make ends meet, and then became Irving Berlin, guy who wrote White Christmas amongst many other American staples. You know.
Yeah. When you lived in New York, where what neighborhood were you in? I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn Heights. So, from New York originally.
I lived in East Village for a few years. It's hard to. It was not rough, you know. By then, it's 2009 through 2013 or something like that, and it was such a pleasant place to live because there's great food, but there was also still a melting pot feel to it that I'd never gotten. And the building that I was living in Stuytown had more people in it than the whole community within a 10-mile radius, you know, that I lived in as a kid. So it was a nice juxtaposition to get a taste of a real city with people from all over the world with all different kinds of experiences. And you're up against right next to poverty, so, you know, sometimes, and then right next to oddity at other times. And I missed that a lot. You know, it's, I live in the most densely populated part of Nashville, Tennessee. And it's nothing, even though I can walk to some restaurants here in my neighborhood, it's certainly not the kind of beat that I was walking in New York.
Yeah. I went to NYU, and I had friends of mine who were studying acting, and one of them was from Georgia. The other one was from Oklahoma, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I will never forgive them for is they got rid of their accents. And I'm like, fuck, don't do that. Don't do that, man. Like there's some, I think that there's a real beautiful sound to just Southern accents in general that I really like.
I just got offered to read a part. I can't say anything about the movie, but it was such a strange thing to come through to say, come read for this. Don't change your accent. It's this film set.
Now you're in your head. You're going to be in your head the whole time. You're like,
I know. What kind of Oklahoma accent do you want?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I taught college when I was living in New York, and I went up to host a lot of the CUNY schools I taught at, and the one up in the Bronx called Ostos. It was about a 30-minute click up the 456 line, and I had like 3 hours or 4 hours in between classes, and I decided just to take a class, an acting class up there. And it was this beautiful woman from Puerto Rico who was an actor and a filmmaker, really vibrant person. But she had gone to NYU. And so it was, I felt like I had a by proxy taste into a decent education, in that we'd start out with yoga and breathing and all this stuff, you know, and learning how people walk and where they carry their weight and stuff like that. Such an interesting thing to me.
I went to City College for grad school, and I taught up there while I was going through graduate school. Taught a few classes like I don't know if they were called expository writing and literature and that and that sort of thing.
City College. I taught at City Tech. was not that, which is in Brooklyn Heights, CUNY City Tech in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah,
Heights,
City
right
College is up was it Convent Avenue, 100 like
Mhm,
137th or something
mhm,
like that.
mhm,
Uh that's where I was. So with the doc, and now you're putting out an album
mhm.
with, is this all music that was already in the doc, or is this music inspired by the doc?
There's music that was in the doc directly, and then there's a couple of B-sides that didn't make it into the film as well that were inspired directly by the film. And then some of the songs were just sound beds that didn't have lyrics to, or sound beds that I didn't use the lyrics to when I slipped them into the film or whatever. But yeah, that it's been a musical creative process along the way too, because I scored the film and then wrote songs for the film. And now in December 4th, we're putting out the record that is the music from the documentary Red Dog. So I'm really excited about it. And it was interesting to create something that was so heavily conceptual in a way, because it was directly inspired and relative to the characters in the film.
hmm Yeah, I've been after I watched the documentary, I went online on YouTube, and as you do, and I
Mm-hmm.
looked up your songs, and I think ever since we communicated about doing this episode, I've been listening to Connected and Heaven Knows back to back, back to back, back to back, and that's from a little while back. I think like
Yeah.
2007, 2008.
Yep.
Um, but I absolutely love those tracks, and I
Those were written in New York. It's actually 2012 those came out, and
okay.
they were all written and produced in my apartment in New York, and were really special to me. And Heaven Knows was a song that I'd written that was based on a friend of mine's short story. She is an author who writes she writes fiction, but she also is a successful children's book writer. Her name is Coulter Jackson, and my kid made her a retroactive godmother and created a contract with a seal on it and all this stuff. My kid was 10 years old at the time or something like that. But Coulter had this book about a frog. I don't remember exactly. The frog looks at the water in the drain, or I don't remember what happens, but I was like, I would like to do a little spinoff of that. And could we create an animation based on your story? And she was like, yeah. And so me and her and my collaborator for Red Dog, who I met in New York, that was one of our first projects to do together, where we conceived of this animated story that was related to the song that I made that was inspired by her book. So it was this sort of interwoven thing. And really, really fun to make. And then Connected, we did a video for, which was we made that at my kid's school at Eastside Community, which is in the East Village, and got a few kids to be in the video. And then another artist from New York that I'd met at a coffee shop, and all of his art, Benjamin Wright Coleman, had all of his art up on the walls at this coffee shop, and I just loved it. And so he came on board to do drawings and stuff for it. So I've always loved collaboration like that.
Yeah, and I notice a real playfulness with the videos that you make that I really like. And the one, Heaven Knows, the you're singing about, wondering what's going to happen, or the character, what's going to happen when this character dies. Is this,
Mm-hmm.
what will the worms be doing?
Mm-hmm.
What will I end up becoming? But yet
Mm-hmm.
it's so playful, especially with animated toilet and the frog kind of jumping towards
it. Yeah, it was, it kind of stemmed from this question about the afterlife that my kid and I were having too, was related to that. And so it's the story of a frog talking to his tadpole kid. And then they go off on these little explorations of what death could be. And I'm still really proud of that. It's hard to stay proud of things that you do a decade ago or whatever, but that one was such a joy to make and to have, what's the word, camaraderie with your friends that are making it and have it be a meaningful piece.
Yeah. And I think now it's really tough with just kind of like YouTube and social media in general, where I started out doing videos on YouTube, I think, and like over 11 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was always the opportunity, there was always the chance that if you put something out there, people are going to see it.
Right.
And then it became where it's like, man, I put all this work into it. I put it out there and it's like, damn, only like a few hundred people, a few thousand people seeing it. Like, man, like people need to see this. I made this. I put everything into it.
That's the hard thing about art in general is that, especially then where we were completely indie, and all that I was relying on to put it out there was just whatever algorithms are already in place. And will it get passed on to somebody else? And generally the answer was no. People, even if people like it, it might get passed around in a few thousand people or whatever. But I mean, the other beauty of it is that here you are a decade later into it. And if somebody's into one thing that you do, they can still tap into the other things that you did that you're still proud of. I've muted a few things that I didn't think were good representations of what I see myself as for good or bad, whatever. I've always been one to trash all the old songs and not care that I put them in the recycling bin, and just leave it at that if you just keep making stuff. But now it's a little different, when you have a little bit of a team around you. It's not like I'm a part of a huge conglomerate or anything media wise, but when you make something and then you get a distributor and they have their avenues and you have your avenues and you have your press people or whatever who help get the word out to get people to see things. It's different now, but there's still something interesting that there is still a zeitgeist that happens. That was like the beauty and promise of virality, and
people used to put out like whether it was on Craigslist or casting calls, they're like, we're casting for a viral video, and it's like you didn't even make the video yet. How can you?
And there, I don't know if there were back then if there was any real formula or something to create something, and it informed my video making for my own music, and that I was trying to create a narrative that was interesting, that would play out. And it's changed my perspective a little bit on videos now, because I have this indie band, Hey Steve, and Hey Steve is kind of this unbridled, absurd, weird joy kind of thing. And I talked to Casey, and it's never about a narrative. It's like, cool. I think maybe if we just, if I put a wig on and just dance around in front of a green screen and you like put Godzilla in the background, I think that would be good.
Speaking of backgrounds, my wife is walking by with our baby. It's cool, Mish.
That's it's like when I loved the piece in where the newscaster gets busted in on by gets busted in on by the kids and the nanny and whatever, you know.
Yeah, and then his wife comes out and pulls the kid away. Yeah. She's horrified. And it's like, what are we gonna do, man? I'm stuck in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Like we're living, we're doing our thing.
My oldest is down in Bushwick now, kind of going to the new school, virtually going to the new school, I guess I could say. So about almost done with a history degree there.
Is this going to be another degree or?
Not mine. It's my kid's degree.
Oh, your kid's degree.
My kid lives in Bushwick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Yeah. So the kid's in Bushwick going to the new school.
Wow.
Anyway, that's the kid who was 10 years old in the videos that you saw.
When you're doing the project, like Hey Steve, which I listened to, and you're writing songs for other people, are you ever like, damn, this song is perfect for this band or this artist, but man, I really want it. I want to keep it. I want to do it. I want to do it my own. How does that work out?
Hey Steve is such a thing that it's hard to imagine pitching those songs to other people. Although weirdly, the song Fuck a Bomb, Drop a Single was considered in country music, like by an artist. They're like, oh, I'd love to cut that. And I'm like, how in the fuck are you ever going to cut that? Like, how are you going to pull that off? Never going to be on the radio, which in that case, it's like, I don't really care. Doesn't mean I can't record it and sing it and stuff like that. So it's not a point of contention. But then another country artist on Warner Brothers, Charlie Worsham, cut a song called Birthday Suit from Hey Steve. And you just never know, it's like, to me, creativity, you just kind of have to chase the things that you're really excited about. And if I'm not excited about it, or at least my career anyway, some people aren't like this, but in my career, the only things that have meant anything to anyone have been wound up being on people's records or being a song on the radio, has been, if I cared about it from its inception. Conception.
Well, someone's got to put it in your head first. So I guess inception. And then
yeah, there you go. Even before the conception of it,
right.
So that I don't ever hold myself back if I feel like there's a song that needs to be happening. I just get it, but it also causes you to be less precious about. Only 18,000 people listen to it on Spotify or whatever. It's like I don't fucking care anymore. It's like. I wanted people to love it and to get passed around, but it's like if by the time it's out on Spotify, I'm on to writing 2 or 3 more or whatever, or on to doing something else. And I'll go play songs when we can play songs again. I'll play all of them and then be happy about it,
Yeah. I feel like in the stuff that I do, so for the past, over 10 years, it's been doing like online content. And for a while I was with a project where it's basically a new video every week. And it was such an experience where I couldn't enjoy the process. I couldn't enjoy the ride because it was like, you got to get it done, get it out, and I'm on to the next thing. And that could be tough, especially, if you're finally at the point where you're making music and you're making a living at it, or if you're doing comedy and you're making a living doing comedy, it's like you need those opportunities to kind of step back and be like, this is pretty awesome. The fact that I get to do this.
Sure. I feel I worked in advertising. That was the first time I ever made money for music in my life. And I had a lot of liberal arts friends that I met in New York who found themselves in the advertising business. And they said, well, we love your music. You should do this or, whatever. Play music to this, play ukulele to this Sweet and Low track or whatever. And it was always, can you have it by tomorrow? You get the call at 9 p.m. Can you have a great song, for Kotex by 8 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, sure. What kind of emergency is this? I don't even know. Do people not know what, whatever Sweet and Low is right this second? Has there been a dip in sales or a dip in public awareness of Sweet and Low or Hunt's Ketchup or whatever? It didn't matter to me. It was just a way not to have to do things I didn't want to do in life. I didn't mind driving forklift, but I'd rather be, if given the opportunity, whether to drive a forklift or play ukulele to a flying Sweet and Low package, I would pick playing ukulele to a flying Sweet and Low package every day of the week.
Yeah. There's that old Bill Hicks bit where he basically says, if you work in advertising, kill yourself. He's like, no, seriously, kill yourself. And there's advertising gets such a bad rap where I feel like, all the other arts are the other arts, I'm already calling it an art. Art is treated with such dainty fingers, and like it's so special and held up so high, where I saw the documentary about Muscle Shoals and the Wrecking Crew and stuff. Whereas like, in a way, a lot of these players, these amazing studio musicians were like, hey, look, I need you to come in here and figure this thing out for this pop song. Come on in. They're a day player. They go and they make it happen, and then they go home. And it's sort of like their version of Kotex is sort of like, hey, I need this song that the kids are going to make out to.
It's a tricky, slippery slope to... it's not like I really care about Hunt's Ketchup all that much, but it's like, look, and this may be just my working class roots showing here. Look, everybody in music in the music business is trying to treat music as a commodity. And it's this big marketing artifice. In order to get songs out there, in country, it's country radio. You got to get out to country radio. In rock, it's a little bit more atomized. It's like, well, there's some playlisting on the digital servers of Spotify and Apple, whatever. And it's also the night shows, and it's also press, and it's also AAA radio or whatever. And it's all to be like, and the artists have sold their rights away because it costs money to do all that stuff. And it's like, you're already getting into the advertising / marketing game because you want to market your creativity for a living. So I'm not calling that disingenuous at all. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that's the game that you're agreeing to in some way. Unless you're going to be a busker and just really not care about making a living at it, the only reason that music can make a living and have the sort of faint whiff of the possible stardom or possible success is because it was commodified in whatever in the radio era, from the 50s on. I still hold music as magical,
sure,
and its essence, and songs as magical at their essence. But to get into it, to make money, there is a certain bit of grind that has to happen. They have to go on radio shows and do podcasts and stuff like that when they have a record to talk about. And when I was making music for Sweet and Low, or Hunt's Ketchup or whatever, I was just like, well, I had these real doubts about my own artistic merit or my own self-worth, because it was like, nobody gives a shit. I can spend 100 hours on a video and nobody seems to give a shit. So I don't know if I just don't have the talent. What I'm doing is not applicable enough on a scalable level or whatever to actually make a living at this. Whoever created Hunt's Ketchup, well, they made something maybe that was worth eating or something, or that people
second
love.
To Heinz ketchup.
Yeah,
in the ketchup wars, they come into
a distant second I didn't create ketchup. I don't know if I've ever created ketchup with a song, because that's pretty big. I mean, ketchup is a big deal. So I just, I think, well, whatever. I'm here. I'm going to try to create something that I like, that could be an accompaniment to whatever thing they want to do, to sell their ketchup, and I'm just like, fine, whatever. It beats working 12 hours, moving steel around on a dock. It's all, and then you're done after it's done. It's like shift. It's a different kind of shift work on your own terms.
And with the sweet and low thing, anytime you're at a diner and you look over and somebody's pouring some into their coffee, you could be like, just give them a little.
Yeah. I'm part of the reason you love that shit.
I was thinking about how shitty it is that people are called one-hit wonders. It's sort of like where are they now? This one-hit wonder. And it's like, I wish people would just think about how hard it is to even get close to having a one hit.
Yeah.
To actually have a hit that has somehow penetrated out into the universe and that means something to people, where they're going to listen to it and play it over and over.
Right.
Again.
I mean, that's still such a stroke of genius and luck. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a one-hit wonder. I don't know why.
Most of the ones I think about are just sort of like 80s new wave, just
sort
of like
I just
haircuts.
For some reason, the first thing that came to my mind was Terrence D'Arby's "Wishing Well."
Oh yeah.
You remember that song? It was such a groove, and it's such a beautiful groove. And I'm just like, wow, man, bless him for coming up with that. I'm so glad it's in my life. It's been a companion in a way. Or Eddie Grant's "Electric Avenue," I was obsessed with as a kid. And strangely, that guy, he was working out some political frustration in Electric Avenue. Somebody told me this. Jimmy Buffett is obviously not a one-hit wonder, but somebody was telling me that Pina Colada is about two lovers who are frustrated with one another, and so they go out and they put out want ads to find a lover that's better suited him. And if you like Pina Colada,
getting
lost in the rain. Yep. But they had written the same want ad,
so they find each other at the end.
So they find each other again, and I'm like, how brilliant is that? How brilliant is that?
Yeah, that's a great song. So your son, do you have many kids? I have one. I have one.
Four. Kid. I have 4 kids.
Okay. So
it's gnarly.
So the oldest is going for a history
20.
major right now, 20 years old. So my son just turned. He's going to be around Thanksgiving. He'll be 8 months. 8 months. So he's new. He's brand new.
Yeah, it's fresh stuff.
Yeah, and something that I've really enjoyed is listening to music with him, because whatever I'm playing for him, this is the first time he's heard it, and I can't tell you the amount of times I put on Righteous Brothers, whether it's You've Lost That Loving Feeling or Unchained Melody, right? And I just hold them and slow dance, and I'm crying. And it's like, and it's a wild thing, because I've heard these songs so much, but it's new to him, and now it's new to me hearing it again, hearing it for the first time.
Meaningfulness can be constantly born anew with art and literature or whatever, depending on where you are in life and what you're relating to. That's the beauty of art and meaning in general. My son, he should be like an A&R man or a publisher, because he calls all my hits. Like before they get into the hands of artists or something, he's like, play that song again. Like, and then I'll ask, do you like that? Yeah, nah, it's all right. Play this other song, from your whatever. And used to be, you would think, because he's just a radical, radically loving, radically ornery, radically chaotic, radically like loving kid. And his taste in music at first was heavy. Like I'd play like Magic Man or something like that, or AC/DC, and he was so into it. But then he became into all this stuff, like loved David Bowie and Bowie's concept records, his later records, like his last records. Emmett was obsessed with the death stuff, you know, from Black Star, and then he's back there crying to Adele and all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, what a feeler, man! This kid is such a feeler.
You might have a young Clive Davis right there.
Yeah, maybe. He'd be, hopefully he'll be nice to the artists, right?
Yeah, I definitely have. I was trying to think of if there's one band where anytime I put their music on, I'm immediately transported to my youth. And the one band that does it for me every single time is the band Deftones, which is a very, very heavy.
Yeah, I know the Deftones, of course.
Heavy band with some melodic singing, and I'm like, shit, I'm 15 again. I'm just
I think Nirvana does that to me, for sure. Snoop Dogg's early records do that for me. You know, it's like, boom.
It's crazy the pace nowadays when it comes to music. Like what, you know, where it's sort of like, oh, that's over, we're on to something new already.
Yeah.
Put on the classic rock station, and you're like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are classic rock.
My mom got super pissed because they had a classic rock station in Oklahoma City. It's now defunct, but KRXO 107.7 KRXO. Sunday morning they'd have they started playing Guns N' Roses on classic rock, and she's like, what the fuck is this? and then Sunday morning they played it on Sunday morning over easy, which was supposed to be like Al Stewart's Time Passages, Gordon Lightfoot, Jackson Brown. Then they played Sweet Child of Mine on Sunday morning over easy, which was supposed to be easy listening, and she went on a fucking diatribe. It was so hilarious. I had it on film. I don't know, I lost it, but it was so funny.
Yeah. This going back to Red Dog, your documentary, it must be such a trip for your mom and her friends to, for one, have this stuff documented, you know, for the first time, and to look back and just see how wild they were, how beautiful they were, you know, physically, like, you know, they were all just gorgeous women. And also, I think like you mentioned earlier on, just, you know, how powerful they were too. And
that Connie has a line in the film where most of them start dancing, and they're obviously the first time they dance, they feel self-conscious, and they have to drink a lot before they're willing to get up there and do that. But then Connie said, it took a while to get up there, but then once I got into it and got comfortable, I was into the power of it, you know, the power that you could have over people dancing. And I thought that was such a poignant thing to see that. There's a I don't know, what do you call it, influencer who followed the film. Jack the Stripper. Do you know who that is?
I'm not aware of Jack's work. No.
Well, Jacqueline is either is or was a stripper in Manhattan, and she has such a interesting take on power and her business, and I just have appreciated along the way. And she came, I can't remember what, NYC Doc. I think we had a screening at NYC Doc, and she came to it, which was awesome to me. And then we had a paltry turnout in San Antonio. We ended up winning Best Historical Documentary down there. But as I was like staring at the 12 people in the room there, I was like, man, I should have just come in a day early and buy 50 tickets and give them to strippers and have them come watch the film. You know, I thought that would be an interesting dynamic to add to the culture of film festivals, you know.
Have there been any offers to to turn the story into either a series or a feature?
Casey and I have had a few people reach out, and it's always something that we entertain. Nothing has happened yet. And we're off dreaming about other features and also sort of seeing this one through, because there's obviously so much work like this. I mean, I'm just finishing finishing the soundtrack, which because of COVID era, it just held everything up. And I have so many plates spinning that I'm like, let's just get through the marketing aspect of the film, and then we'll go back to the drawing board creatively. I mean, I feel like I have a lot of creative energy left in me to come back to something and do whatever. Right now, doing more work with a Red Dog spinoff, since we spent a fucking decade on it, doesn't sound like something that's at the top of my list. But if there was another filmmaker that wanted to come in, that would be cool. So Scorsese, if you're out there, I got a real doozy for you.
Yeah, I've been watching just a ton of stuff now that I've been home, and one of the series that I rewatched was the series Deadwood on HBO.
Yeah.
And so I was rewatching Deadwood, and then the show's creator, David Milch, I've been binging all of his talks that he gives.
Okay.
And that's one of those series that it just raises the bar so high where you're like, you know what, I'm not even gonna fuck around with narrative anymore. I'm just gonna, like, that's there, you know.
You know, it's like I get that way, and I feel like it's like I feel so dinky as a creator because I've only been dabbling in film for 5 years, maybe, you know, heavy. And you watch a Coen Brothers film and think, how in the fuck could I ever touch anything great? And the truth is, well, you can't until you do it for a long time. And those guys are such brilliant creators, you may never touch what they do. But you have your own voice, and you try to cultivate that, you know, and hopefully it's something that's worth being out there, that's unique enough that you can sit back and say, well, I did that, and there's nothing like it, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, and it's like, thank God the secret is you don't have to be that great. But meaning you don't have to, you know, be able to touch the gods. You know, you could do what you're doing, but also, you know, you can do what you do, and you can still have a huge impact on people. And, and I thought, like, seriously, my wife and I, we watched Red Dog. We enjoyed it so much, and it was so well done. It did not feel like a first time film. Man,
that's awesome to hear. And honestly, like I've had an overwhelming response to it, where I can't respond to people anymore because it's just too much. You know, there's too many places they're coming at you at, and I'm just like, tell management, check all these emails. If there's anything good, you let me know. And thank goodness that it means something. And every once in a while, there'll be something that comes through. It's like, you know, my mom was a dancer and she died when this and that and the other, you know, and it's like, this really did this, or, you know, this really brought a lot of things to a head to me. And I'm like, this is really great. You know, you don't know what a song or a movie is going to do for people. You just kind of have to make it and then let it interact with the zeitgeist, and the zeitgeist is going to do it. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of making music or anything. When you, even at a very small level, you know, a super DIY level, like 10 years ago or whatever, with Heaven Knows, it's like, you just make it. And even at a big level, you don't know how something is going to react to other human beings, even if it is plugged into the giant algorithm of the modern music business or the modern filmmaking business or whatever. So to me, it's like, you better care about it, or don't do it at all.
Yeah. And I would say this too, to anyone out there: if you see something you love, if you see something you're like, this is amazing and more people should see it, do your part and try to get more people to see it, whether it's just sharing a post on social media, or even, do what I do and hit up hit up Luke and
Yeah.
just be like, hey man, I
Yeah,
love what you made.
Hit me up. That's awesome.